Start, Dimple.
Namaskar everyone. Hope you all are safe and healthy. I, Dr. Dimple Valla, on behalf of GS College of Commerce and Economics, Jabalpur MP, extend my hearty welcome to all our esteemed guests and participants. As it turns out, this is the time dominated by online education system. So, to achieve the objectives of teaching and learning effectively, needs quality online education and evaluation. With this thought, we are online today for the international webinar on use of Bloom's taxonomy in quality online teaching and evaluation. As we know, for decades now, Bloom's taxonomy has helped educators to develop critical thinking and higher order cognitive abilities in students. Today's session will help the educators and learners to have a better clarity on goals, learning objectives, and learning outcomes. We have quite a diverse panel today who will help you to have better understanding of the three domains of Bloom's taxonomy and a practical insight in using Bloom's taxonomy in your class and lessons. Before I start with the presenters, I would like to call respected principal, GS College of Commerce and Economics, Jabalpur, Dr. Sunil Ava, who has always been inspired and promoted us for planning such events. Sir, please give us welcome speech.
Good morning, everybody. It is indeed a pleasure to have you all with us today for this international webinar. We have been trying hard to hold such webinars, and at the same time, we tried our level best to invite the best of the speakers so that the students as well as the research scholars and faculty members take advantage of the present scenario. Today we are hosting this webinar on Bloom's taxonomy, and I believe apart from education department, others are also aware of how learning is classified under different categories, starting from remembering, understanding to creativity, and so on and so forth. We have with us today Mr. Abhishek Bhatnagar, Product Development Manager, Exceed Education, Gurgaon, Delhi. I warmly welcome him. We also have Dr. Chandra S. Lalwani, Emeritus Professor in Logistics and Supply Chain Management in Business School at University of Null, London. He'll be joining us shortly. He is also working as external examiner for Brunel University of London, University College Cork in Ireland, and Coventry University Partner Emirates Aviation University in Dubai. He is a learned professor and is at present busy with some other assignment and will be shortly joining us. We have Dr. Seamus O'Reilly, Senior Lecturer at Business School, University of Cork, Ireland. She will also be joining us shortly. We have Mrs. Reema Raji, Faculty, Global Indian International School, Singapore. I welcome you, madam. You are there with us. We hope you will enjoy this webinar, and we already have a lot of participants who will also take advantage of your lecture. And finally, we have Mrs. Hema Gaikwa. She is a Senior Professor, Symbiosis Institute of Computer Science and Research, Pune. So welcome all, and I hope this webinar will definitely help not only, as I said, the education department, but all faculty members as at large. These webinars are definitely helping us in creating an atmosphere for education, for online education, and at the same time, this also is bringing us closer in national seminars. Otherwise, physical seminars, we were unable to gather so many people, and we were unable to listen sometimes because of their own limitations. And as such, webinars are helping us in coming closer, joining heads together. We will also, in the longer run, try and sign MOUs with such institutions and go on conducting such webinars in future also. I once again welcome all. Thank you all, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for throwing light on today's event. Now, I will invite Honorable Dr. Srimati Shubda Pandey, Managing Secretary, Shiksha Mandal, Madhya Pradesh, who has always been a source of inspiration and motivation, and being the strongest pillar of the institution, always supported us for organizing such events. Ma'am, please give your blessings to us.
It's rather a pleasure for all of us at GS to welcome such an esteemed resource personalities to our institution. And of course, from my society, that is the Shiksha Mandal Education Society, we always want people to join us. So that in our endeavor to take education to the last person who can be educated, you can help us go through this journey of finding people and of course imparting education. Now, our institution is headed by Sri Rahul Bajaj, and Sri Sanjay Bhargav is the chairman of our Shasi Nikai. As you already know, Dr. Pahwa is our principal, and I take care of the trust matters and also for the institution. We are all there together, helping each other out. Now, education has been very close to my heart, as from a time when I could understand things, I always have studied something new every day, read, written about it, so that it stays with me for a lifetime. So when I was going through the Bloom's taxonomy, and I saw remember, understand, apply, analyze, and evaluate and create, I came to the conclusion that somewhere we were all connected to Bloom's taxonomy. How to use it is for the experts to tell us today. And I think we are all going to benefit by it, because I personally feel that education is the ability to learn new ways. When you do something new, you must have the ability to learn that new thing in your life. The tenacity to ride a rough road, it's not going to be very easy for all of us now. With the COVID onslaught, things are seeming very, very difficult. So my only request to everybody around me is that we have to fight it, not get only scared of COVID, but we have to fight COVID. So now we need the tenacity to ride a rough road. The patience for deep sense and commitment. That is the most important part of getting educated, is the patience to impart knowledge. Now, sometimes it happens that teachers at times when they are teaching lose the patience with their students. Now, patience needs to be brushed up every now and then. We need to find new ways. My best wishes for this webinar, and what Bloom started in 1956, we want it to continue now in 2020. We are looking forward to more solutions and the way we can deal with this crisis of COVID. Thank you for joining us, and welcome again from GS Commerce College. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable message and blessings. Before I start with the presenter, I request participants to share their questions on chat, which will be answered at the end of the presentation by resource person. Now, we start with our presentation. Before inviting our resource person, let me introduce him. He is Mr. Abhishek Bhatnagar, the Production Development Manager, Exceed Education, who has vast experience in developing educational softwares. An education sector specialist engaged with both public and private education system. Their educational products, HOTS, that is higher order thinking skill, is operational in 80 countries. He holds a master in educational planning, economics, and international development from UCL London, and he is a BTech from IIT Kanpur. Please start with the presentation, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bhalla, for such an introduction. I'll now share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So as we have heard in the introduction, I would take off from that message that as Dr. Pandey mentioned, Bloom's taxonomy is something is although the concept cuts across fields like psychology of education, philosophy of education. It finds its use in our daily lives, and more or less every individual can sort of correlate with it. Um, so I'll try to keep I'll try to keep away the jargon as much as possible, so that this webinar can be utilized for individuals from a range of backgrounds and job roles and so on and so forth. So what would be the agenda for my webinar? First, I'll start with a brief of the model. What exactly is the Bloom's taxonomy all about? How it is structured. I'll then move on to the model's evolution. So, as Dr. Pandey mentioned, the model found its origin in the mid 50s. It has gone through several rounds of changes with several researchers contributing to it. So structurally, it has changed. It has evolved, and the evolved version of the model finds its use in modern day education and is especially relevant in the 21st century. Uh, Third would be the model's application. How does the model, which I will obviously elaborate later in my presentation, is applicable to education today? How does it fit into the education interventions, classroom transactions? How does the whole thing pan out? Would be my third agenda. Then would be how does the model, when positioned along with the age of internet, how does it pan out? What are the implications? And what are some of the things that educators can look out for with this awareness of the model? Um, Last would be some of my reflections on the next level possibilities. As we all understand, the world currently is under a crisis, and things are moving towards the internet. But as we emerge out of this crisis, when the pandemic ends, a lot of things will restore back to the way they were, but a lot of changes are permanent. So the world will never be the same again. It will, some things will change for the better, some for worse, and how we as learners, educators, professionals emerge from this basis the awareness from this model. This is what I'll roughly be covering. So I'll start with uh, the introduction on Bloom's taxonomy. How and what of the model. So the framework is it is a framework on development of human thinking. How human thinking, the cognitive process. What is the process of learning? How do educators act or behave or transact in education practices such that it catalyzes human development thinking is what the model is. What are the various processes? The process is hierarchical and linear. So you will understand this when the diagram emerges. So there are various steps, as you would start imagining if it's a hierarchy. Each level subsumes the other. We will talk about this. As I said, because it is a human thinking development model, the model talks about various levels of cognition. This is what the model looks like. It resembles a pyramid or a multi-level building, you might imagine. It starts with the lowest level is the knowledge. This is the original Bloom's model. The lowermost pedestal is the knowledge. So knowing something, simple as that. Facts, very, very simple. So for each level, I have taken an example so that we can understand the knowledge. So for example, the chemical formula for water is H2O. I mean, you guys, are comfortable with the chemistry example. Being an engineer, I have learned grade 8 chemistry. So the chemical formula for H2O is a factual statement. It is a fact that we have all understood. We have not, I mean, it's a thing that we memorize, that we know as a beginner of chemistry. Uh, The comprehension bit is the next level. So what does the formula H2O imply in terms of what is that I understand out of it? What does that fact mean? So water is a compound of hydrogen and oxygen. That is what I comprehend from this knowledge that I have. The application of this would be, so H2O2 and H2O, they are both formed of oxygen, but they are different somehow. I will not go into how they're different or what differences are, but the application level basically is to apply, is to utilize concepts and ideas into going ahead. So it's a level ahead of comprehension. You've understood, you know something, you understand it, and now you apply it to reach a different level. This is the third level, the application. Analysis is you break down the information into multiple parts, and then you reach another level. So H2O is made up of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. So it is not just hydrogen, it is formed of hydrogen and oxygen. There is a number associated to it. So it's 2 of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen. This is the analysis part of it. So analysis by this idea is you break down information into multiple parts. The synthesis is somehow, now that I know that it's 2 of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen, I somehow can design an experiment so that I can somehow break water into hydrogen and oxygen into its component parts. If I can design something like this, that is a synthesis level exercise. And evaluate is, now I know that if I can break water into its constituent parts, is it possible for me to manufacture hydrogen and oxygen for my house? So if I have a backyard laboratory somehow, can I create a container full of hydrogen and oxygen? This is the progression to evaluation. This is what Bloom in his original 1956 paper this is the chain of human thinking that he developed, what he proposed. The first 3 levels is what he called as the lower order thinking skills, LOTS. And the top 3 levels he defined as higher order thinking skills, or HOTS, as it, HOTS is becoming a really marketable term in education these days, and we hear about it every day. As you would naturally react to this, or even sort of gauge from your own experiences in education, the first 3 levels are more to do with what has come to become today of rote memorization or studying to the test. This level is the knowledge and comprehension is more because it is more information oriented. That is why it is associated with rote learning these days. The higher order thinking skills is where experiential learning comes into play. So you know the facts, you experience something so that you can reach another level of cognition. This is the original Bloom's model. As I said, this is the original Bloom's model. The model has undergone evolution since the 1950s and 60s. So in 2002, a group of researchers, they proposed a new model. The chain, I'm sure you notice the wordings have changed and the order has changed. So let's try to understand what exactly has the model changed into. So the first obvious change is that the original model used nouns. The new model utilizes verbs. So this is not just reflective, it is not just change in semantics. It's a shift of educators from milestones to processes. So all these nouns that you see are abstract nouns. They're abstract in nature. By their very, it's hard to the applicative utility of the model becomes limited because the milestones are abstract nouns. Now, when you think of processes, it becomes much more tangible. This is the shift in mindset that this change in semantics is reflective of. The second change that the researchers proposed was they flipped the sequence of the top 2. So if you notice, the old model had the evaluate bit at the top. The new model has create at the top. The corresponding verbs have flipped the sequence. So what the model now sequence proposes is, after you are able to analyze, the evaluation is the next bit, and then is the creation bit. So the creation is the top level of thinking that the new model proposes. While we are discussing all this, one question that one could raise or one could critique is that these are all facts. All the statements that I spoke about in the earlier slide. So right at the top, that I can manufacture hydrogen and oxygen from water. They can be facts as well. They can be knowledge as well. So there's a bit of knowledge and there's a bit of thinking process. How do you disintegrate the two? So for me as let's say as an engineer against a grade 8 child, for me every sentence there is a fact. It's knowledge. If I remember that just for example electrolysis can break water, that's a fact for me, but not for a grade 8 child. So there is a difference, there's a slight difference between the cognitive process and the knowledge itself. So how far I can think is the cognitive process, the thinking skills, and how much depth of knowledge is there. There are different levels of knowledge as well that you can all now imagine. So the model evolution, the proposition was that we segregate the two. I'll speak about this in the next section, in the application. Continuing to where we were, this evolution of the model disintegrates the two dimensions, the thinking process and the knowledge dimension. They're not different. So you have all these steps in the thinking process as different steps. Against knowledge, you have remember. Remembering is a process. You remember. So the capital of France is Paris is a remembering level skill. And then you evolve the next, all steps remain the same, but knowledge is made into a dimension. So there can be factual knowledge. The next level can be conceptual knowledge. There could be procedural knowledge. There could be awareness of knowledge, which is a knowledge dimension itself. So I will not go into too far into the psychology of education bit. But there are these verbs that emerge. The implication is actually the application of the model that is most relevant to educators. So within the lower order skills, these are the verbs across the different dimensions of knowledge that are most critical. So for example, if we talk about the remembering level of thinking skills, the first pedestal, listing, recognizing, recalling, and identifying, these are all remembering level of skills. And they move along the dimension of knowledge. Summarizing, classifying, clarifying, and predicting. These skills exemplify the understanding level, but at the different levels of knowledge. The knowledge dimension defines how these verbs are critical. Similarly, across the levels of higher level of thinking skills, these verbs become important. So as educators, how is this relevant? It becomes important for educators and learners simultaneously to be aware of these verbs. So sometimes in the absence of this awareness, we confuse or we limit ourselves to a particular level. We think that we have progressed a level. So for example, using a piece of knowledge and classifying or clarify and use can clearly be confused between one another, although they belong to the same categorization of lower order thinking skills. So as you move along different grades, this idea of cognitive development becomes very critical. And this is why the awareness of these verbs for educators especially becomes very important as to within their classroom transactions as well as within the assessments. With this information, they can design their assessments in such a way that they can clearly assess whether the learner is progressing across the thinking skills ladder or not. So for example, now the concept of project work or critiquing papers is becoming very popular, at least in the big schools or big universities. So designing models is becoming very attractive to professors and teachers. reflecting on existing work, for example, is becoming very popular. So evaluating work that already exists, these are indicative of higher order thinking skills, and awareness of these verbs uh, can be held of importance. Um, Coming to my next slide, I wanted to take you through an intervention that clearly signified the progression across the thinking skills ladder. The intervention that we did was from Bahraich. It's a small uh, it's a district in UP. We intervened in 5 villages there. The baseline was, I mean, the children were hitherto out of school, which means that they were out of school under the Right to Education Act. They were admitted into schools, and the Right to Education Act also says that it is compulsory that you put the child in the age appropriate grade. So, for example, a 10-year-old kid has to go to grade 5, irrespective of his baseline cognitive skills or knowledge or information that he has. It becomes the onus of the government and the public education system to bring that kid up to pace uh, at that grade level. So that was the baseline. The schools there suffer from extreme shortage of resources, including number of teachers. There are very few teaching aids, teacher training, training and development, and handholding support is extremely minimal. This led to a very retarded academic transactional, sort of progress in the area. The children were not able to progress there. This clearly showed in the assessment and the baseline study that we did. So, be it knowledge oriented testing or cognitive testing, the children in that particular district, in that particular intervention area, could not perform as well as the comparison group. So when we compare the children from this area to similar areas in other districts or other places which were better off, they were lagging. So how did we? I Rather than going into how, actually I could really, I could explain a little bit. We gave a bit of resourcing. We developed their teachers. We trained them. We handheld them. We saw in the first period of our intervention, we could see that they were able to remember and understand at that particular age appropriate level. Given the resources and the support, they were able to remember and understand. They could consume knowledge. They could start digesting it, and gradually they could cross the first two bridges in the cognitive ladder. They were able to remember scientific facts. The intervention was a STEM intervention. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we supported them in science and math, the academic outcomes that we were expecting at that particular grade, and we exposed them to projects in science which stood for engineering, and some coding exposure in as part of technology. In the next cycle, we could see clearly that they could apply and analyze. So these children were previously out of school, but it's not as if they did not learn anything. They were limited by reading skills, they were limited by information, but it's not that they had no progress at all. So children tend to behaviorally learn also from around their surroundings. So they could, once the information is at their disposal, they could use scientific resources. They could start conducting experiments. They could start interpreting scientific facts, and were able to apply and analyze things. They were able to differentiate between how a solar eclipse is different from sunrise, for example. So this progression was clearly visible. In the next phase of our, as we progressed along our project work, we could see that the children were able to determine components of various things. So if you can see the visual there, they were able to produce projects from, they could basically evaluate what component played what role in a particular project. So these set of small projects were created by their teachers. So with the help of their teachers, they could gauge that what role is this particular thing playing here. So for example, if you there was, I can't remember, one experiment, they were able to operate a small bulb from a series of potatoes. So they could understand that what role the potato is playing. So that is clearly indicative of an evaluative skill, which is tending towards higher order thinking. In our last phase, they could synthesize. They could really design projects independently. So when I say design and synthesize, the most critical context is the age appropriateness, because the knowledge has to be age appropriate. The cognitive development has to be seen in that context, as I have reflected in my previous slide. The synthesis is that was visible was, uh, they knew that there are marbles. They play marbles in their surroundings, and they knew that the digestive system is, has a certain the way it functions. So they designed the digestive tract. They put it on a cardboard, and they used marbles to show the movement of food and the processing that goes through the human body. So this was a clear indication, and it is not, these are just examples that I'm talking about. So it is just that we went ahead with this chain in mind, with this awareness in mind. These were a clearly set objectives that we want children to progress in cognitive development, go through various levels of thinking skills. And this is where we could reach in our intervention period of 3 years. And these were children who were previously out of school. So it was a big win. Towards the end of the intervention, I told you about the baseline scores. They were outperformed by other students of comparable age and background. This time they performed significantly better, even in statistical terms. So this was the impact of our intervention. Now, how does this model pan out in the age of internet, where all sorts of edtech products are available, and we are in the digital age, really? So every information, every knowledge, even the application is available at the click of a button. You do a Google search. Even if you search Bloom's taxonomy, you will have 10,000 pages that will open up, all sorts of diagrams. Even I mean, I must admit, I've adapted some of the diagrams even in my slides. So how do you, as educators, how do you utilize, I mean, how do you live with that reality? What happens is, my interpretation of this fact is that the first three levels, the lower order thinking skills, are sort of are I spoke about how knowledge is a carrier of cognitive development, how knowledge can aid cognitive development or thinking skills. But at this point in time, when everything is available in a very, very less amount of effort, you're not able to decipher whether there's a cognitive development or there's a knowledge increment. So for example, how do you decipher whether the child has deduced the applicative fact or applicative level by through a progression of cognitive development, or whether this is an information that has come? So we live in an age of information overload. So how do you work with that? At the same time, there is a very, very critical demand for higher order thinking skills. So we see that STEM sectors are growing, product management is growing, coders are becoming very, very, they're high in demand. All the high paying careers, for example, today they demand higher order thinking. And this is where the role of educators is extremely crucial. It is not that the lower order thinkings are not valuable or they're not useful, but everything is, I mean, the it becomes difficult for the educator to decipher whether the progression through the thinking skills has taken place or whether it's an information overload. So they are constantly at loggerheads, at heads with the information overload, with the lower order thinking skills progression. So the gap between this between the two types of levels, the lower order skills and the higher order skills, is a role that the educators have to play. It's a very critical role. And various education products would have to be designed in this fashion. So in Exceed, where I am currently, we design our education goals with this fact in mind. We define our learning objectives very clearly as to which lesson is doing what. But because this is one type of product, but not all education products will have such a clear distinction in what they want to deliver and where do they want to progress. And I'm sure there are multiple products in the market that do that, but there are also multiple products which do not do that. So in this age, it becomes very critical for the educator to assess as to which tools to adapt, what are the products that are most useful, and this becomes very important. Another challenge that we face is one could critique our education system. The incumbent rule of the market is that the competition is based on marks, and marks are often based on knowledge, and assessments are lower order things oriented. So if a child scores higher in marks, there's no guarantee that the progression in higher order thinking skills has taken place. This, because schools need to sustain in the market, they want to project that marks level success in the market, and thus this incumbency of dependency of assessments on lower order skills does not go away. This, as educators, I feel we need to really move away from, because when the rules of the competition start becoming, when people start competing on the level on which the children have progressed in terms of projection of higher order thinking skills, that is when we can really think about a true transformation of the education sector in India. Some of the reflections that I would want to leave you with. So as I said, technology in education really opens up several boxes of new challenges and new opportunities simultaneously. In challenges, as I said, it throws a lot of information for both the educators and the learner. So how does one consume that information, and at what level? Too much information will prevent the development along the cognitive dimension. So a grade 8 child having the information of a grade 12 text, the child can certainly memorize it, but the child will remain at the remembering level, will never progress to a higher level unless an external intervention is done. At the same time, technology can produce opportunities for multidisciplinary development. So for example, in terms of multidisciplinary and multidimensional development, is what I mean by that is, so within our STEM intervention, we gave children the opportunity to code. So these were children who had never even looked at a computer before in their homes. They obviously had access to mobiles, but coding was never even a thought that could have come in their heads or their teachers' heads. So we introduced drag and drop type open source tools. So one of them is Scratch. So what happens there typically is you have an animated character, and there's a command. The command says drop. The child drops the command from top to the pane, and when you click on submit, the character starts walking. Now the platform offers multiple such verbs, multiple such activities that the animated character can do. Now this technology offers the child to do multiple things. In our experience, this interaction with the technology enabled the child to not only learn the meaning of those activities by learning by doing, so more experiential. They could see what the character is doing. They formed storybooks out of this. They produced certain stories by which they could spread awareness. So many of our created projects did a lot of they had social messages in them. So they showed these live projects to their communities, their parents, which spread awareness on cleanliness, or gender equality, women's empowerment. All sorts of products based on scratch were produced, very simple, and produced by children who were in the age of 11 to 13. So that sort of opportunity to technology offers. It's only the onus of having access, giving access rather, by the educator is critical. How do we use the information overload to our advantage in the development of thinking skills is a question, really. So for example, there is news and there's fake news. Now utilizing, rather, looking at multiple articles and deducing that information, digesting that information, utilizing it, reflecting on it, and then creating something new. This progression is again significant. Is it exemplifies it. It is reflective of development of cognitive skills. So while information overload poses a bit of challenge in in cognitive development, it can be used in our advantage. Using that overload to our advantage is really a process level question that we can think about. I strongly feel that with so many edtech products coming up, technology in education emerging, there's a big need of segmenting learners. So in our classrooms, in our daily transactions, learners might come from different learners from different pedestals in the cognitive chain. So segmentation of these learners, which learner is exactly where, this information needs to be available with the teacher, with the educator, and this used to be quite difficult, but with technology this has become much easier. So now there are tools on Google. Google surveys are a very, very convenient tool. For instance, there are psychometric tests available. There are products that are available that in a short effort can really help you segment your learners. And once you have that information on the segmentation of learners, this really enables differentiation in the education practice. So within the classroom, which sort of practice caters to which segment. So if I as an educator know that I have 30% of my class which is still at the analysis level, I have to ensure that they progress in such fashion. If there are X number of learners who are in the higher order thinking skills, I have to give them something more challenging. So those differentiation tactics or differentiation strategies can be made available to the educator, but then the information needs to come first, and that technology has enabled. It is much more doable today than it was, let's say, 10 or 15 years back. Assessments, I mean, as I've said, our assessment systems have been competing on lower order thinking skills for way too long now. Education policy, are the way educators now are developing, they are evolving from that methodology, but then it needs to keep at pace with which technology is emerging. So we need to really think 5 years ahead in our development processes, so that we can keep at pace, so that we can deal with this ever changing world. The corona crisis, as I said, has given an irreversible push to technology in education, and our education practice really needs to be cognizant of this, and so does our and also it is important for our practice. That's all I had for you. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your enlightened views on the Bloom's taxonomy. And
Thank you.
And
I understand. I understand. I might have covered a lot of ground, but the topic is such that it needs this kind of, yeah.
Now, I would like to present our next resource person, that is Dr. C.S. Chandra, who is from London. And just give me 1 second, I think there is some issue. Yeah. We have Dr. C.S. Lalwani and Dr. Seamus Orele, who are jointly going to present their views on the topic. Before we start, let me introduce them. Dr. S. Lalwani, Emeritus Professor of University of Hull, London, has vast experience in field of higher education. He has also worked as academic director in the same university. He worked as visiting professor at Newcastle University, UK, and adjunct professor at RMIT University in Australia. He was deputy director with Cardiff Business School, UK, before University of Hull. He is going to present his views jointly with Dr. Seamus Orele. And so, Seamus Orele, who is a senior lecturer at Business School, University College Cork, Ireland, has worked closely with industry in supply chain management over 25-year academic career. As academic director of education in supply chain management, he has contributed to the development of a range of part-time programs from undergraduate certificates to postgraduate master's level that are offered through classroom, distance, and blended learning formats. Now, I call Dr. C.S. Lalwani to start with introduction, which will be followed by Dr. Seamus' presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bala. It's a privilege to join this panel. I couldn't join right from the start, but I did listen to Abhishek's extensive coverage of Bloom's taxonomy and how attempts could be made to implement it right from the sort of the stage of factuality, understanding, and then moving towards the evolution and to some extent creation. Now, just let me, explain that I don't come from the education background. I actually am from the logistics and supply chain management as part of the management approach and the education in that particular context. I have sort of worked in the academia for all my life, right from sort of 1970s till now, and things have changed quite dramatically over the years, even in my sort of field. And my sort of knowledge of Bloom's technology is quite limited, actually non-existing, as it were. I do know that the taxonomy, and I know the stages which actually one is involved in bringing it up in relation to also what is needed and also what actually is involved in terms of assessments as well. But I had some concerns actually in relation to my own subject area, which is very sort of practice oriented. The logistics supply chain management is very practical field, very practical area. And that's where the issues arise. And I sort of have conducted in sort of recent years number of online sessions in my particular field in various universities globally. Recently, last 2 months back, I did one for University of West Indies in Trinidad, in their business school. And there were some issues actually in relation to make it productive and come out with sort of very tangible results, as it were. What I understand, and I feel that there is sort of scope for blended online and face-to-face education, which sort of produces the best possible results. If you could display my first slide, Dimple. You have the slides? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Yeah, so there were some 7 slides actually we emailed to Dr. Balla. Is it possible to put the first slide on?
Chandra, I can see. Can I share the screen if you like?
You can see the slides, do you?
I'll bring them up. I'll bring them up. You see, and this is yours.
Great. Yeah.
So there's us, and there you are.
Yeah, okay. Now, this is what sort of I focused on, and looking at the knowledge part of the taxonomy. I sort of fully sort of agree with the approach, and I'm sure that one is able to actually implement it quite successfully and produce results, because it's just factual and data-based, and therefore in my field, of course, we start with that. There are a lot of factualities before you get into the application, and also logistics, supply chain, and business management as a whole. We follow case-based approach, and it's quite easy to sort of generate these factualities and transmit this knowledge to the participants and people following this particular area. The comprehension part, again, I'm quite happy and have implemented it to understanding basic facts in context of the subject area. And students have sort of given really good feedback. And in both these areas, it's possible also to carry out assessment, because the knowledge you could sort of have number of tests, multiple choice, as well as fact-based assessment and comprehension. Also, you can sort of judge whether the student has applied it properly or not in terms of understanding the facts. When you get the application part of the taxonomy, this is where the issues sort of start with me in terms of to see whether the student has actually understood the facts. And that's where, when I was doing this with my team at University of West Indies in Trinidad, the problems came up, because in the classroom I was face-to-face, and there were then about 70% were online from different islands of the West Indies, Jamaica and Grenada and St. Lucia and all that. And this is where the application aspects were bringing in a number of issues in terms of following this taxonomy. So we had to get back to sort of traditional online teaching. The analysis even becomes more difficult in my view, and then evolution and creation part, of course, we find it hard to get there. But nonetheless, I'm sort of all for it, because this is the future, the Bloom's taxonomy and enhancement of online technology and online teaching in relation to what one can achieve. That's where I would like to bring in my colleague, Dr. Seamus O'Reilly, as Dimple has introduced him. I mean, he's in the field for a long time, and we have worked together for a number of years in this subject area of logistics supply chain, but he goes beyond that. He has sort of a multidisciplinary background, and has a number of years, over 20 years of experience working with the industry at all management levels, and has produced excellent result. You know, I say from putting my another hat as an external examiner for his university and assessing his courses, and I'm all for it. And he actually has used Bloom's taxonomy approach with his students, and even in the more difficult and applying things almost every single day. But he has produced excellent results, as I understand, by putting some sort of preconditions. So
Would you enter? Okay, so you.
It's perfectly okay.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's perfectly okay. You can carry on.
Perfect, good. And feel free to interrupt if you wish, okay, as I go along. As Chandra was saying, we use the Bloom's taxonomy in how we deliver our programs from the very outset in terms of sharing this with the participants on our programs, in terms of what our expectations are from them. So maybe to start with, we might just think about the learning environment and some of the factors that we might consider that will influence that environment and what our objectives are in that regard. Okay, so as Chandra was saying, delivering content we have up here. So in teaching, we want to deliver content. We want students to be exposed to new information. And that might be theory, it might be new concepts, it might be particular techniques, it might be tools. And we traditionally have done this in a classroom situation. In online learning environments, there are different variants, but there are two main approaches. One is just online and the other is blended learning. And I'd like to speak a little while about blended learning. So this is a continuum going from pure online and to this end here, pure classroom. In the middle, there's blended learning. And there's all variations then about how much you deliver online and how much you deliver in the classroom. Generally, we deliver 50% online, 50% in the classroom in the courses that Chandra referred to. And they are courses for industry. So we're dealing with post-experience participants. And we can come back to that in a few moments if you wish to, and talk more generally. But as you outlined, Chandra, these are industry courses and this is our interaction with industry. So we're bringing in people with experience, and they will have anything from about 10 years upwards in terms of experience. And our courses are mainly blended learning. One of the fundamentals about blended learning is this notion of flipping the classroom, so that you do not deliver much content in the classroom, you create the interaction in the classroom. So you deliver the content up front and you try to find ways that the participants will engage with that. And then in the classroom, you have all of the interactive type activity, the breakout groups, presenting on case studies, working through exercises, debates, discussion, all of that type of thing. So that's called the flipped classroom. In learning, if your objective in learning, if your pedagogy is active learning, that means by definition, you need to get the participants engaging up here early on at this level. When we bring in post-experience students, we actually don't start down here. We don't start with the theory. It's very useful to start with theory if you have people who have not any experience. They don't have any world experience. You have an 18 or 20-year-old taking a degree program in a university. They have very little experience. If you start with experienced people, bring them in and start with their experience and find the theory. So we go in reverse. We start up here with their world experience, their real world problems, And then we introduce lenses which they can view those problems, they can study those problems. So we don't only flip the classroom, we flip Bloom's taxonomy to some extent, in that we bring them from a place where they are comfortable in their real world, and then bring them into the theory, so to speak. And then they come in a cycle back around, like a double loop thinking. They come back around then, and now in terms of analysis, absolutely, like carry out independent analysis. But now analysis, look for evidence to support the theory, or look for evidence to refute the theory. So you're not just taking it on face value. So there isn't just a face validity to your theory, so to speak. And also, because these are post-experience students, then they also realize that our theories down here in academia are really useful ways to understand things, but they're very seldom holistic. They're very seldom going to answer all the problems that we have, but they're very, very useful lenses. So that's one approach to this in terms of where one might start. So the most important thing is who these people are up here, who you're teaching. And you design a learning environment then for those people. So I'm talking about if you wish. So we're trying to do these, achieve content. We are absolutely trying to get participants to engage with material. We're trying to create interaction, but our pedagogy is based on active learning. It's actually based on, like if you had an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, it'd be problem-based learning. You'd be giving them a problem, you'd be starting with the problem, and then you'd be introducing various tools to address that problem. And my experience lies in the blended learning. My preference to date has been blended learning. I've just had a PhD student complete his PhD looking at blended learning, and again, the evidence, the support we have point to the richness of blended learning, in that you have the classroom for this interaction, and you have the online to find ways of engaging people with content. And they're all the tried and tested things in terms of content. Putting content online, using short videos, using short questions. Really interesting, Chandra, your point here about assessing, and down here that it's easier to assess, so that you will have short questions in there that the student might need to answer in order to progress to the next stage. So they might need to know some basics about lean. If they can't name out the 7 wastes, they've got to go back again and find out what they were, and then come back and plug in their 7 wastes. So they're the kind of the fundamentals that we have. I have been challenged in the last few months because of COVID-19. So while my preference is for blended learning, so the mix between both, we've had to deliver online purely because we couldn't bring people onto campus. And that's been interesting, and it has worked out very well. So here's some of the things that we do, and I'll talk about the challenge then of the current environment. So climbing the taxonomy. So we've said something already about while it's a very, very logical taxonomy, it's not always the best thing to start at the bottom and work to the top. It depends on who your participant is. And certainly the more you go up and down the ladder, the better in terms of engagement with participants. So we would have a lot of, as you well know, Chandra, and I think you're being a little modest there because you have been external examiner, as you said, on our program, and your advice has been very, very useful. So the design of all of the assessments fit together. So it's our job to map out the learning journey. The student won't see the learning journey. We won't show them the whole map at the beginning. That's like showing them the high mountain and saying we're climbing up there. We do it in stages. But all of the assignment must bring the student on a particular learning journey. So our assignments then are designed, because it's a post-experience program, that they are work-based, so that they engage with these real-world problems and then use the various theories as lenses to understand them, use the various tools and techniques. So just for one example, and don't worry, Dr. Vala, I won't go on too long. One example, metrics. So we introduce metrics to them in the classroom. They go out into their industry and they look in their own company and they have to identify what they consider to be 3 key metrics, but they work with a buddy. So one of the biggest challenges in online learning is keeping people involved. And one of the most important things in learning is interaction. So we've said 2 things. One, active learning with problems, and secondly, interaction with other people. Because the biggest challenge most of us Homo sapiens have with learning is that we come in with preconceived ideas. So we need ways to shift people's mental models. We need ways to, in a proactive way, challenge the assumptions that they are coming with. And most of the time, they don't even know they have those assumptions. So when you have buddies, so if we put somebody that's working in the food industry with somebody who's working in the pharmaceutical industry together, and each of them to share what they think are their key supply chain metrics, and then to discuss them, and then to put an argument forward for what are the 3 most important metrics, that creates that type of interaction. So active learning means active in terms of with the problems and active in terms of interaction. It's easy to do in the classroom to some extent. It's harder to do online. So you need these type of things. And then we also have team assignments where they work in bigger teams than just the buddy teams. And again, they have to schedule their own meetings. Because it's flipped classroom, they come in and they present within the classroom. And then finally, learning at the end of the day, even though we might emphasize the active idea of engaging with problems and engaging with one another, learning is personal. It's what you come away with. So within the whole set of assignments in terms of the journey, reflective logs, reflective journals are very, very useful. So you design a reflective journal that the participant is keeping as they progress along this learning journey. So they're internalizing all of these pieces down to here. So maybe, Dr. Vala, I'll leave it at that. One of the very important things about online delivery is short bursts. So I better not speak for 50 minutes. So short bursts, short time, and then breaks, etc. So I hope you found a little bit of my experience of interest, and I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Yes, just to add there, Shamus, I mean, you mentioned to me about the relationships among the participants, actually, in terms of, they getting to know each other before getting into this climbing to Bloom's taxonomy for you to deliver was quite critical. That only made it possible to actually generate some tangible results. Is that right?
Correct. That's a really important point, and thank you for bringing me back to that, because that's our COVID-19 challenge as well. When we had to move to purely online, all of these participants already knew each other. So we've had some really good sessions. We're on Zoom now as it happens, and I delivered some of the material on Zoom, and the breakout rooms on Zoom are great. So I set problems and tasks for participants in small groups. They worked in their room. I could visit their room and travel around it just like I would in the classroom. I asked the participants afterwards, did they find any difference being in the classroom or not? And they said no. And I didn't find any difference. The problem, and as you point out, Chandra, is they already knew each other. And that is a big challenge in terms of pure online learning. And that's why I'm an advocate of blended learning, because I think it's very, very important to break down the barriers between people and get them comfortable with each other, that they will interact and they will exchange ideas and they will understand each other in terms of when they're challenged. It's not an aggressive thing, it's a useful thing, for example. So all the tactics that we use in the classroom, like the first day in the classroom, any group, is the most important 8 hours of the entire program. And we use all kinds of tactics, as most or all of us do, in terms of ice breaking, getting them to know each other and all of that. So Sandra, yes, that is one of the big problems. And that's why I think online learning per se is best in the lower levels of Bloom, unless you can create a really interactive environment. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to achieve the richness in learning that we're talking about.
Yes, so I mean, the technology is advancing now. It's at such a fast pace, you know, digitization, even our field has become quite critical within the context, again, of the disruptions we have due to COVID-19. Things will develop, I think, and it could become a new norm, actually. So there are quite sort of, it's a great potential. Even I have now changed my views about it. Listening to Abhishek and yourself actually gives that positive outlook. So over to you. Yeah, sorry.
There's no such thing as a digital native anymore. We're all digital now.
Exactly.
And that's an old term. We've all been introduced to it. And so the only issue I have now with online learning is those personal relationships, and whether that can be engendered online from the get-go without ever being physically together will be an interesting challenge.
Yeah. I mean, our talk actually, especially at Seamus, has been all practice-based and practical subject area. It's quite different. I mean, what we deal is with the higher education, the universities, and executive programs, as well as the traditional sort of bachelor, master, doctoral programs. Things are quite different, as actually was pointed out by Abhishek, in view of the context of the school education. And different approaches apply there. But for our area, I think this relationships, because education is not just a learning, but also it's the social aspects to it. And if technology could bring that aspect as well in learning, then it's brilliant. So over to you, Dr. Bhalla, to raise any questions from the audience.
Any questions from the audience? Thank you, Dr. C.S. Lalwani and Dr. Seamus. That was sure and insightful revelation on blended learning. And it's truly said, learning without interaction is not an active learning. Thank you for giving us time in such a short notice. Thank you once again, Dr. C.S. Lalwani and Dr. Seamus. As they are occupied in other appointments, they'll be leaving and not be there with us. Thank you once again to them.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, bye-bye.
Further, we have with us from Singapore, Mrs. Rema Rajiv. Her experience speaks. She has been associated with Global Indian International School, Singapore for the last 14 years. She has armed with best insight on Montessori educational planning and the theory of multiple intelligence. She has been the integral part of the team that has helped to revamp the curriculum to 21st century skills for the students. I welcome you, ma'am. Please start with your presentation.
A very good morning to all the panelists, attendees, and viewers. It is indeed a privilege to be attending this international webinar, and I thank the management of GS College of Commerce and Economics for the opportunity you've provided to me. interesting thoughts and opinions have been expressed by the other panelists, some of them very, very thought-provoking. Now, what I'll do is, just a minute, I'll just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
You can carry on.
Sure. So to begin with, I'll introduce myself. I am Rama Rajiv, and I represent Global Indian International School, which has its headquarters in Singapore. We are spread across 7 countries with about 21 campuses in all. As mentioned in the slide, we've grown from 48 students in 2002 to about 22,000 in the past 18 years. And I've been associated with GIIS for over 14 years, heading the kindergarten segment. Now, this slide talks to you about Global Schools Foundation. And the Global Schools Foundation was founded in 2002 with the mission to cultivate and nurture young minds into global leaders of the future. So my presentation will focus more on, just a minute. I'm not able to move this.
Are you okay, Rema?
I'm not able to move to the next slide.
Oh, can I do it from here?
Yeah, go ahead and do it.
Yes, just give me 1 second.
Should I stop?
Rema, you want to go to second slide?
I'm not able to see the second slide.
Oh, I'm just doing it. Just give me 1 second. Hello, Rema.
I am not able to.
You have to stop your screen share so that we can do it from here.
Can I stop it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
That's right. Yeah. So yes. Right. So this particular slide talks to you about the VMC.
Rema, you can switch on your video also.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So this particular slide talks to you about the VMC of the school, and the aim of our school has always been to continue to educate leaders of tomorrow, so innovators and global leaders. But the important thing is to keep the vision of being an international role model for teaching and learning. The most important part, as mentioned, the vision is to focus on all-round development, creativity, and entrepreneurship, thus producing the 21st century learners. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Right. Now, under the GSF, that is the Global Schools Foundation umbrella, we have the international schools. So the Global Indian International School and our sister brand, One World International, fall under the international schools. And under the early childhood schools, we have the Global Montessori Plus. That's a kindergarten segment. Now, apart from that, a lot of emphasis is given to sports and culture. We have the Global Indian Mahatma Gandhi Center for Universal Values. This not only provides insight into Mahatma Gandhi's teachings and values, it also reinforces his values and beliefs and their relevance to the world in which we live in. The next thing is the Global Indian Cultural Center. Now here, every campus of ours has this center in their campuses. It provides an ideal environment to promote Indian classical dance and Indian music, different kinds of languages, all kinds of national languages, sports. A lot of importance is given to sports like cricket and soccer and badminton and tennis. Speech and drama is an important part of the Global Cultural Center. Then we have the Chandu Borde Cricket Academy. Not all campuses have this. And the last one is the Global Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. This center helps to develop creativity and entrepreneurial skills in our students. So a lot of importance is given to building the 21st century learners. Can we move on to the next slide? Okay, now this is the 9 GEMS framework that we have developed in school. This is an educational framework which is aimed at fostering all-round development of our students through an integrated, holistic approach to learning. It's an award-winning 9 GEMS model, and it is a fusion of Eastern and Western educational approaches, which takes learning beyond academics. Academics is an integral part, and there's a lot of emphasis, highest emphasis is on academics. But through best practices, through latest technologies, in the state-of-the-art learning environment, but a lot of focus is given to the other GEMS as well. So when you talk about sports, the sports fields and the facilities where students learn teamwork and discipline and the importance of a healthy lifestyle and balanced approach to both studies and sports. Digital arts and visual arts brings about the creative nature of the students, and it allows them to express themselves in a very nurturing and safe environment. Creativity is another gem that we have, which focuses again on innovation and problem solving. So right from kindergarten level, where there's a lot of focus on STEAM activities and STEM activities, for the higher levels, we have the innovation labs, the environmental labs, all these focus on developing innovation and creativity, and all this is not teacher directed. So there's a lot of freedom given to the child to work with the manipulators and the classroom resources. The next gem that we have is entrepreneurship and leadership development. Right from the very, very young age, our kindergarten students are given a lot of opportunities to develop their leadership skills. So simple activities like, you have the energy monitors or the classroom monitors or the board leaders or table monitors. So all these are opportunities which are given to students right from a very, very young age, going on to students at a higher level where there are leadership lecture series which are conducted. There are entrepreneurship programs which help them interact with industry experts, and they have student councils which are set up. So things are done in a very professional way. We recently had, a model United Nations simulation that was done to give children opportunities to develop their leadership skills. Global student exchange programs, all these kind of activities actually help to develop their leadership skills. There's something called Real World Challenges Convention, which is held every year. So what happens is children are given opportunities to, conduct debates and brainstorm on futuristic ideas right from kindergarten. So the development happens right from fundamental levels right up to grades 11 and 12. Universal values, ethics, and discipline. Beyond academics, I think we need to instill universal values in children. So what we do is we have a program called the LVEP, which stands for Living Values Education Program. So in the 10 working months that we have 10 values that are instilled in them. So that's 1 value per month. Now, it is very difficult to teach children about values. So what we do is we do it through skits or through assembly presentations or, moral stories for kids are done. So this is how we, and difficult to, the value of empathy. empathy. How do you explain empathy to a child? So there has to be a lot of role modeling that happens when as you work with children. Now, community connect and care. This is another thing now, because of the COVID situation that happened. We got children to prepare thank you cards for the frontline learners, and students and teachers videos were prepared. Tie-ups with local communities were done, national environment agencies, and things like that. So there are a lot of students visit old age homes. They donate books to children in different parts of the world. So children are taught to give through the Community Correct program that we have. So to summarize, the 9 Gems framework is woven into every element of the GIS ecosystem. Can you move on to the next one, please? Just a minute, if you don't mind. I seem to be having an issue. Could you excuse me for a minute? Hi, hello? Hello? Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear.
You can, right? Okay, now I'll get on with this particular slide. Now this talks about the old versus the new taxonomy. Now, a lot of other speakers have spoken in depth about the original Bloom's taxonomy and the revised Bloom's taxonomy. So I will not touch much upon it. But the topic being discussed today is of the use of Bloom's taxonomy in quality online teaching and evaluation. Bloom's taxonomy, as we all know, Benjamin Bloom is the one who came up with this theory in 1956. It is hierarchical. So learning that happens at the higher levels is dependent on the learning, on the knowledge and the skills that children acquire at the lower levels. So in short, it is before you understand a concept, we need to remember it. To apply a concept, we need to first understand it. In order to evaluate a process, we must first have analyzed it. And to create an accurate conclusion, we must have completed a thorough evaluation. So as Abhishek has explained earlier, particularly the first, if you take the first hierarchy of remembering, it's basically about recalling knowledge from long-term memory. So the learning objectives could begin with words like, okay, can you name, the internal organs, or could you label the internal organs, or could you list down the internal organs for me? Similarly, evaluating, when you come down the hierarchy or go up the hierarchy, evaluating it requires learners to critique what they see and to make judgments. So the learning objectives there could start with words like choose or compare or select. The creating is the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy. The words like formulate or build or modify, these are the learning objectives that could be used. Now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we cover the learning objectives. Only then would we be able to enable students to meet their outcomes. Now, while sometimes it is difficult for e-learning to cover all the stages of Bloom's taxonomy, it still provides, particularly if you consider the first 3 steps, a great foundation. And teachers love Bloom's taxonomy. The framework can be used to create assessments, to evaluate the complexity of assignments, to increase the rigor of a lesson, and so forth. But It simply provides an order for cognitive behaviors, and it can be applied to almost anything. But now Bloom's taxonomy is 60 years old. So the pedagogy of the 20th century differs from the pedagogy of the 21st century, which is called the age of digital technology. So does Bloom's taxonomy have a place in modern learning? How are schools changing? How is learning changing for our students? Can our teaching styles change? We have to adopt. There's just adapt. There's just no choice. So if we have to keep up with the changing climate, we all have to adapt. Can we move on to the next slide? Right, so transitioning to the virtual platform at GIIS. Now, the unprecedented COVID situation has forced educational institutions to go into the virtual mode. So at GIIS, we have adapted pretty well to the new ways of, collecting course materials and preparing our notes or presentations and experimenting with video recordings. We've had hitches and glitches initially, but we picked up pretty well. So far, so good. And I'm sure it'll only get better as we get accustomed to this style of interaction. We recently had a PTM with our parents last weekend, and it was very, very encouraging to know from parents that, that we are doing a very, very good job. Children are engaged, fruitfully and meaningfully engaged. So that was based on Bloom's taxonomy's 6 levels of hierarchy, what happens in a classroom setting and how it is being done virtually without compromising on anything much. So I put on the hierarchy, I asked him to identify, showing the pictures and all that. But when I do it in the virtual space, I can do it in a much more interesting manner. There's so many websites that take you to all these, topics. And we do things like QR codes with children. I mean, this is with kindergarten children. Get them to draw things, you can get them to paint things, presentations and things like that. So what we've done is, now when you come to the creative level, the creative part, business plans for the higher levels can be done. We've got children to engage in a particular competition called the Sony Creative Toy Making Competition. So this is all being done from home, because we've gone into the virtual mode. STEAM. STEAM is basically science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So a lot of focus is given for STEAM at the kindergarten level. At the higher levels, they do a lot of STEM activities. So, but the thing is now, because they are at home, not many resources are available at home. But when they are in school, there's a lot more of STEAM and STEM activities being done. But children have composed poems. They've done a lot of book reviews in the past 2 months. I spoke to you about the Model United Nations simulation that we did recently. Podcasting has been done. The primary years program, Celebration of Learning, where students present to their peers with parents present at home. So all these things have been done, and this is the academic part. Now, when it comes to co-scholastic learning and celebrations, we've not compromised on that too. So music classes have been done, dance has been done, percussion has been done, visual arts is being done regularly, yoga is being done regularly. Now, we've also engaged in all the celebrations, the Earth Day celebrations, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Literary Week, Science Week, all these things we managed to achieve, within the last 2 months. Now, there are a lot of value-add programs that our teachers use, for evaluation and assessments, like Hema. It's a home-based learning platform for math, which is done once a week. Similarly, there's something called DA, which is detailed assessment. This is for CBSE students classes 3 to 8. This is a subject-wise assessment, which is done for English, math, and science. And, they're tested every 6 weeks. Then there's something called Qubits, which is a local platform in Singapore for math. And it's again a home-based platform. So this is for the PYP students, the primary years program students of grades 1 to 5. Then there's something called Seesaw, which is again for the primary years program for grades 1 to 5. And here what happens is, teachers post activities, students do those activities and post them back, and then portfolios are created for every student. Then, of course, there's the Khan Academy and teaching resources for teachers. So there's this program called, this app called Genius, and Tata Edge for CBSE grades 1 to 8, and Genius for the Cambridge lower secondary program. So teachers have a lot of resources that they can access for various subjects, worksheets and contents and things like that. Can we move on to the next slide? Right. This is the 9 gems pedagogy. I think I've already spoken to you about the 9 gems pedagogy in one of the earlier slides. Now, what I have done is in this particular slide, based on the 9 gems, I have listed down the activities that we've done virtually. For academic excellence, of course, virtual classes are conducted every day. There are, collaborative projects, Hey Math for math, DA for English, science, and, math. Then creativity and innovation. So this is like an ongoing thing. Sony Toy Creative Making Competition comes into that. Kaleidoscope activities are activities which children have done from home using recycled materials. So there's a lot of emphasis that we give to green activities. So we have a very, very strong green curriculum. So children are encouraged to do a lot of recycling activities, upcycling activities through the green curriculum. STEAM and STEM, of course, is very, very important, because apart from academics, once children finish their work, their classroom work, they're encouraged to use the manipulators in the classroom resources to engage in STEAM and STEM activities. Entrepreneurship and leadership development, I did mention this earlier about the Model United Nations simulation that we did last week, and the Global School Exchange Program, which students of grade 7 and 8, attended. Now, Universal Values is again the LVEP program, which is a value-based program. Community connection and care. Yes, I've described this earlier. Children are encouraged to do, learn green songs and do a water pledge every day. We have a very strong eye care program. And in the eye care program, what happens is for little children, heavy topics like global warming and waste management, world hunger, animal species conservation, energy conservation, all these topics are discussed under the ICARE program, and children are introduced to all these things at a very, very early age. So again, just because we are not in school, we've still conducted these things online by, telling them stories based on global warming and things like that. Vocational life skills and career and vocational guidance. Life skills Montessori classes are a very, very important aspect of teaching kindergarten children. I tend to speak a lot about kindergarten children because that's the fundamental level that we start with. And since I've been heading the kindergarten division for the last 14 years, I tend to speak a lot about the kindergarten segment. Now, personality development library classes are conducted on a regular basis in the virtual mode. Digital classes, digital and visual arts, dance, music, percussion, everything is being done on a regular basis in school. Brain gym exercises are done every day with our children. Yoga is done. So that's how, our 9 gems pedagogy is based on the calendar events that we've, calendared for the year in the last 2 months. We've managed to conduct almost all of them in the past 2 months. Can we move on to the next slide? Okay, multiple curricula. I think I've already introduced the multiple curricula that we have in school. So, when we talk about the advantages of going virtual and the challenges, so I've listed down some of the advantages and the challenges that, we encounter on a day-to-day basis. At kindergarten level, we kickstart the day with, physical exercises and the water pledge and green songs and patriotic songs, and, birthdays are celebrated because this is something that children, we thought we shouldn't miss out on this just because they are at home. So, children, the teachers have been, very enthusiastic in jotting down all the birthdays that happen, even in the month of June. We go on a break by the end of this week. So all the students who had their birthdays in the month of June will be celebrated in this last week. Now, all topics are covered subject-wise. There are a lot of online games and activities that are incorporated to make learning fun rather than making it more regimental. Discipline issues are not as much as in a classroom where, you would have to keep controlling students. This is manageable. Informal assessments are being conducted for every child, by the teachers, the way that lessons are conducted. And there's a lot of tremendous amount of planning that goes into, preparing the lessons. The challenges as far as the little kids go are limited attention span, because children are very, very restless. It's difficult to hold a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, get him to sit and listen to you for an hour. But that again depends on how, we manage our lessons, how we manage to arouse the curiosity of the children by, holding them, retaining their attention span. Now, the problem here, one problem that we face is that children don't feel connected to the other students because the videos are not on. So we put on the videos once in a while, but not on a daily basis. Now, when we do STEAM and STEM activities, limited resources available at home, which makes that part, a little difficult. There's no access to Montessori materials because we follow the Montessori approach to teaching. So there's no access to Montessori materials, but teachers do go online and look for, the Montessori videos, and they get children to, watch those videos. So, and this is a more teacher directed and a controlled environment. The workload of the teacher definitely has increased a lot more. Now, in the primary and the CBSE and all the other levels, I think there's a lot of, children are becoming a lot more independent, a lot more responsible. Their digital skills have definitely improved a lot. Children find the resources very engaging. So as far as a teacher is concerned, there's an in-depth preparation of lessons. So, it'll be very easy for a teacher when she goes back to the classroom and, to access all these things if she has to in the next year or whatever, it'll be easy for her because it's all prepared and kept ready. Again, this is all these advantages and disadvantages I have managed to, get feedback from teachers in the last 3-4 days. So this is based on what teachers are going through. There's the shared virtual working spaces, Google Classrooms and Google Drives are extensively used now. So teachers get students to do a lot of peer work checking. When she's doing the corrections, and children have access to the, the folders that she has created for the students in Google Classrooms and Google Drive, she can get them to do that. Now, one very, very good thing we've noticed is that introverted students who are very, very active on this platform. So, and they're not conscious. So the feeling of not being judged by anybody is, I think, what, plays here. And so it works very well for those students. Again, some of the challenges that we have over here are a lot more effort has to be put in by the teachers to make it interactive. Students can play pranks. Yes, students, put themselves on mute. They put off their videos. So we don't know whether the students are, they're physically present, but, whether, they're attending the classes or not, we wouldn't have an idea about that. This could be very, very strenuous for a teacher. Because and for students both, because strenuous for the eye and for the back, because they're spending a lot more hours, a lot more screen time. We have connectivity issues once in a while. So when students get disconnected, they miss out on the teaching time, when on the learning time, and when teachers get disconnected, they miss out on the teaching time. So yeah. We also have students who've actually traveled to India before their travel restrictions were imposed. So they are attending classes from India. So what we're trying to say is that, virtual platforms can be accessed from anywhere and on any device. One good thing is that because of the virtual classrooms, you're saving a lot on valuable travel time, money, energy, and all those kind of things. And the other plus point is that it allows you to save your session. If you've missed something, you can save your session and get back to it whenever it's convenient for you. Yeah. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. Blended learning, I think Professor Chandra and Professor O'Reilly have touched upon it in detail. I've just put it as an example. So blended learning is a pedagogy which has best of both. So while the students are attending the brick and mortar schools with a teacher present, face-to-face classroom practices are combined with computer mediated activities. Now, our ultimate aim should be to produce 21st century learners, the learners who are able to, who can be critical thinkers, who can be problem solvers, who can be creators, and who can be innovators, good communicators, and team players. So when you go to a workplace, these things will definitely come into play. Can we move to the last slide, please? Okay, now these are points to ponder upon. Now, business continuity plan, organizations which did not have one and were caught off guard, they would have actually, kind of scrambled to resolve the issue when the pandemic set in. Parents would have paid tuition fees, and there's a lot of expectations about, not having the virtual, not being able to access the virtual space. I think you've missed the points cannot be seen here. Okay, anyway, I'll just discuss. The point number 2 is about internet connectivity. Now, some countries and institutions are blessed with high quality internet. No, it's a previous slide, yeah. The points cannot be seen, doesn't matter. So the second point was about internet connectivity. So some countries and institutions are blessed with high quality internet connectivity and uninterrupted power supply, but this may not be so for many others. What about students who are residing in rural areas? In many countries, students cannot afford high-speed internet access. Electricity outages need to be considered for many hours, so which could result in mediocre quality internet connection. So due to this digital divide, students cannot attend live classes. Many students cannot attend live classes. The third point was access to gadgets. While some students have own laptops or even expensive tablets, there are many who do not. So some of them have to depend on desktop computers available in schools or at homes. Some have smartphones to connect to the internet. Some have very basic phones. So I think these things we definitely need to look into, Teacher training. Teachers definitely need to be trained to handle the virtual space, their pedagogical skills, their mastering of innovation and teaching. Now, there are people who are very, very computer savvy. They can take on to this mode seamlessly. But those who are very comfortable with traditional form of teaching would definitely take time to get, to be able to get comfortable with this virtual mode of teaching and learning. Now, in traditional classrooms, there is eye contact and there are visual cues. There's collective buzz of students brainstorming on topics, which is missing to quite an extent in the virtual mode. Now, with senior students, as I did mention earlier, the video and the audio getting switched off. So we don't know what the students are actually doing. Are they even in their seats listening to you? The younger students, I think, getting their hands dirty, and with the older students accessing things like the science, the science lab for conducting experiments. So there is a loss in learning in these kind of cases. Assessments is the last thing that I would like to talk about. How does one conduct assessments online that are devoid of copying and plagiarism? Submissions could contain plagiarized cut and paste content. So we need to look into how exams will be conducted. All these issues definitely we need to look into, and and I'm sure with time solutions can be found. So that is the end of my presentation, and thank you once again for providing me with this opportunity to put forth my views. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for adding a new direction to our subject. Thank you so much. Now, from Pune Symbiosis, we have Professor Hema Gaikwa. Being in Symbiosis Institute of Computer Studies and Research, she has experience of planning e-content based on Bloom's taxonomy. She is holding minor project titled Determining the Analytical View of Modern Digital Learning Environment on Students' Learning in Maharashtra region. Her software researches have been published in many journals. Please share your presentation, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dimple, ma'am. मैन्युअली चालू कर लो, मैन्युअली चालू कर लो, उसमें ऑप्शन आता है ना स्टार्ट प्रेजेंटेशन का, मैन्युअली चालू कर लो, मैन्युअली, अरे बटन से चालू कर लो, बटन से।
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Shubhada Pandey, Managing Secretary, Shiksha Mandal, Dr. Sunil Pahwa, Principal GS College, to provide such a wonderful opportunity to speak in front of you all. Then I also acknowledge my efforts to Dr. Aparna Pandey, HOD Education Department, Dr. Dimple, convener, Professor Aditi, co-convener, and complete GS College team for continuous support. Today I'm going to give presentation on use of Bloom's taxonomy in quality online teaching and education and evaluation. Hello, Dimple ma'am.
अरे स्लाइड शो में जाके करो, स्लाइड शो में जाओ फ्रॉम बिगिनिंग।
Hello. Hello.
चालू हो गया।
Hello.
Hello. Hello,
Yes, ma'am.
Dimple.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Audible,
Okay.
and screen is also shared properly.
Okay.
Please start.
Okay. So you are all aware about this Bloom's taxonomy. Actually, this Bloom's taxonomy or Bloom's pyramid has a total 6 levels. The first or lowest level is remember, and the highest level is create. Generally, when the faculty member use this Bloom's taxonomy, they use the bottom-up approach. They use the bottom-up approach. That means faculty members should start teaching with remember level and move to the create level. And in front of all Bloom's level, the action verbs are mentioned. Suppose, for example, if you are talking about the remember level, these are the action verbs. For example, define, duplicate, list, memorize. If you move to the next level, that is understand level, the action verbs are classify, describe, discuss, explain, etc. The third level is apply level. The action verbs are execute, implement, solve, use. If you consider the level number 4, it is analyze. The keywords are differentiate, organize, compare, contrast, distinguish. The evaluate level is the action verbs are argue, defend, judge, select, support. And the last level is create. This is the highest level. Faculty member can use any one of the action verb while teaching as well as while evaluating the students. So for explaining this concept, for explaining this Bloom's taxonomy, I have considered this business studies subject as an example. So assume that this is the unit 1 and total there are 5 subtopics. So my strategy is I will consider one by one Bloom's level. I will consider one by one Bloom's level and explain how to use these levels, how to use action verbs while teaching as well as while evaluating the students. So in remember level, this is the lowest level. Suppose faculty member wants to explain or wants to address basic questions. Suppose for example, what is the business studies? Why we are using this business studies? How this subject is important? How this subject is important for the students. So for addressing these basic questions to the students, faculty member can use the PowerPoint presentation for teaching these concepts to the students. If you want to, after teaching the students with the help of these keywords, what, why, and how, we can evaluate, faculty member can evaluate the concept or student understanding by sharing the Google Sheet. By sharing the Google Sheet, the advantage of Google Sheet is we can collect the student responses in a single sheet. so that after collecting all the responses, the faculty member can evaluate all the student responses at once or in a short time. So this is level number 1. In left hand side, I have considered online teaching, and in the right hand side, I have considered online evaluation. So for teaching, faculty can use the PowerPoint presentation, and for evaluation purpose, this is the keyword. This, as Rema already explained, that there are various action verb we can use in each and every level. Suppose, for example, I frame the question, list down 3 examples of service industry. After preparing this, after creating this question with the help of Google Sheet, I can share this question within a class. And suppose I have considered 3 records, student roll number 1, 2, and 3. Suppose, for example, this is the response of student 1, roll number 1. This is the response of a student having roll number 2, and this is 3-1. So after collecting all the responses, immediately faculty member can evaluate it. So this is the remember level. So this is the remember level. These are the keywords. So I have taken 2 keywords. The first one is what, why, and how for teaching. And for evaluation, I can use the word match, I can use the word list, or I can use the word identify. So this is the level 1. Now move to the level 2. The second level, the Bloom's second level is understand. In level 2, faculty member can, I have taken 2 action verb here because it is not possible to cover each and every action verb within a limited time. So for teaching, I have chosen the word explain. So suppose, for example, faculty member wants to explain any concept in front of student, they can prepare the e-content. They can prepare the e-contents. E-contents can be audio lecture as well as the video lectures. And after explaining all the concept with the help of video lecture, they can recognize the student understanding with the help of Viva. So this is the example. For understanding level, I have chosen the video lecture as a teaching method. And for evaluation purpose, this is the Google Hangout. This with the help of this Google Hangout, I can conduct the audio call as well as the video call. Even I can message the students also. So this is the method we can we can evaluate the student understanding, and we can conduct the audio call as well as the video call. Move to the third level. The third level is apply level. In apply level, I have chosen the word solve and demonstrate. So in Google, we have a facility of Google Jamboard. With the help of Google Jamboard, the faculty member can post their questions. Faculty member can post the problems, practice assignment, as well as the case study. Google Jamboard, it is a type of smartboard. It is a type of smartboard. In smartboard, the faculty member either can write the question or they can directly upload the questions. And if you want to evaluate the assignment posted by the faculty, we can ask student to submit their assignment with the help of Google Docs. So this is the Jamboard screen. So here I prepared one practice assignment. These are the questions. So there are 2 options. Either we can write the problem or the practice question, and in the another way, we can upload the question directly. So this is a Jamboard. So after posting the assignment questions as well as the case study, student can evaluate it with the help of practice assignment, with the help of, they can submit their assignment, they can submit their answers with the help of Google Docs. So this is the screen of Google Docs. So suppose, for example, these are the 5 questions. So student can write their name, roll number, subject name, as well as the answers. So after collecting, the advantage of Google Doc is actually it is same as Microsoft Word, but the advantage of Google Doc is we can collect all the assignment at one time, and the evaluation will be very easy because in a one sheet we can find out all the answers. The level 4 is analyze. This level is very important, as Abhishek already mentioned that the first three levels are the lower level, and the fourth, fifth, and sixth, they are the higher levels. So in fourth level, faculty member can teach students with the help of question and answer session. And questions can be, as we know that questions can be open-ended questions as well as the closed-ended questions. The examples of closed-ended questions are either we can create the multiple choice question, or we can create the true false type of question. The questions can be rating scale questions or ranking scale questions. So the faculty members can have different options. They can select any one method based on the subject as well as based on the complexity. After preparing the questionnaire, we can examine the students by conducting the quiz. So with the help of Google Form, the faculty can teach the students the concept. Questions can be, the first question is, this is the open-ended questions. Open-ended question means we can write the description, short description, as well as the long description. The second type of question, this is a closed question. In closed question, I have given 4 choices. The student can select any one answer. So with the help of question answers round, we can teach the students. For evaluation purpose, with the help of Google Classroom, in Google Classroom, we have a facility to conduct a quiz. So first of all, you have to open the Google Classroom, select the quiz option, and create the questionnaire, or create and conduct the quiz. So on the basis of quiz, you can evaluate the student performance. After analyzing, the 5th phase is evaluated phase. In evaluate phase, faculty member can teach students any concept with the help of research paper. With the help of research paper, the thing is, you can find, because nowadays writing a research paper is a big deal for a student. So the Google Scholar is one of the option through which student can find out the research paper on the current topic, and we can ask student to read the research paper. And after reading the research paper, we can ask, or we can conduct the discussion. We can ask the questions, we can ask the opinion about the research paper, and we can consider the different aspect. We can ask student to write the opinion about the social importance of that paper, the economic importance of the paper, as well as the knowledge they gain from the research paper. And nowadays there are various opportunities, there are various platforms where the student can publish, or where students can submit their research paper. And after writing the opinion, after writing their comments on social importance, economic importance, and the knowledge they gain from the research paper, the faculty can evaluate the opinions of the student, or they can make a complete note for each and every student with the help of Google Keep. This is same as Notepad, but in Google Keep we have an advantage. We can create a note, we can share with the student. we can share our faculty remark with the student. Then student, they will rework on the comment, and again they can submit the the complete work to the faculty, and faculty can evaluate it. So this is the online teaching, that is the Google Scholar. I have put one screenshot of the Google Scholar. So this is the search bar. You can write the subject name. So for explaining the Bloom's taxonomy, I have considered the business studies subject. So that's why I have written business studies. In the left hand side, the student can select the research paper. Student can select the research paper year wise. So and the advantage of Google Scholar is you can find out the white paper, you can find out the research paper, you can find out the book also. And the last level is create level. So in create level, these are the keyword: design, assemble, construct, develop, formulate, and etc. So the important point is the create. This is the actual this is the last level of Bloom's taxonomy. And why this is important for student? Because we can check the student understanding. We can check the student understanding with the recent prototype. Suppose, for example, if you consider the business study subject, and after explaining all the Bloom's taxonomy, for example, the remember, the understand, the apply, the analysis, evaluate, everything, we can ask student to submit or to build or develop the prototype. Suppose, for example, you know that in business studies, we use the concept of business to business, B2B, then business to consumer, consumer to consumer, and consumer to business. So after teaching all the concept, all the business concept, suppose I ask student to develop the B2C prototype. So for developing the prototype or developing any model or designing any model, there are various softwares are available. So we can ask student to use any software to develop the prototype. Nowadays, this software, this is a complete language. This is a UML, that is Unified Modeling Language. Unified Modeling Language, this is the language we use for creating or building or designing the prototype. There are various types of diagrams are available. The basic diagram is, I think, you have heard about the use case diagram. In use case diagram, generally, first of all, if you want to develop the prototype, if you want to design any business model, first you have to identify the business processes. What are the example of business processes? Business processes can be related to the example of first business process is the human resource development. The second one is marketing, the production, manufacturing, development, deployment, etc. These are the various examples of business processes. So in UML diagram, the use case diagram is first talking about the identification of business processes. Then you have to identify the stakeholders, business stakeholders. What do you mean by stakeholders? The stakeholders means the person or the people who are directly or indirectly related with your business, day-to-day operations. So after identification of business processes, after identification of stakeholders, now we can map each and every stakeholder with each and every business. So this is the representation. This is the one way of representing the business model. The another way of building the prototype is we can draw, the simplest method is we can draw the flowchart also. The flowchart means we can start, how to start, when the business will start, and then what are the different processes and what is the last processes. So this is the way we can explain the business process model. The another way is we can define the level-wise business, the level 1, level 2, and level 3. That means the first will identify the operation, first will identify the decision level people, then the second one is managerial level people, and the third one is operational level people. So after identification of all levels, then we can find out the communication medium, how to communicate with different levels. After designing, developing, or building the prototype by the student, we can evaluate the student with the help of discussion in the chat room. So in Google, we have a facility to create. We have a facility to create the Google chat. So I have created one Google chat room for my BCA students. So after creating that chat room, I can include the student one by one. I can here I have I can join the student one by one. I can discuss the design or prototype with the student. I can resolve the query. They can ask the questions to me. So this is the way we can evaluate the students, whatever they have developed, whatever they have developed on their business model. So, so if you can see that all the levels. So here I have explained all the business, all the Bloom's taxonomy levels with the different action verbs, how to use these action verbs for online teaching, as well as how to use these action verbs for your online evaluations also. Here I have selected some action verb, but faculty members, they can select any action verb based on their comfortability, based on their subjects. So, so I have taken here. I have taken only the Google apps because they are easily available and widely used. But many more softwares are present, and the faculty members, they can also be used for online teaching and evaluation. Now, I will summarize my topic. So as Abhishek and Rema and Dr. Lalwani already explained, this is the revised Bloom's taxonomy. Earlier, the number of levels are same. The number of levels are same, but the names are different. So in level 1 is simple. That means with the help of level 1, we can simply explain that topic to the student, and evaluations. We can share the Google Sheet. As I already explained you why Google Sheet is important, because at a glance we can email our question. We can email our question to the student and collect the responses, and faculty immediately evaluate it. The second level is understand level. In understand level, faculty can explain their topic, their complex topic or difficult topic with the help of video lectures, with the help of e-contents. And nowadays, various softwares are available for developing the e-contents, such as Active Presenter, Screenomatic softwares, etc. And the Viva is the best method for checking the student understanding about the topic. The third one is apply. For apply the Google Jamboard. This is a very good feature of Google. We can post our question, we can post our case study, practice assignment on Google Jamboard, and we can collect our answer on the with the help of Google Docs. The next topic is the next level is analyze. In analyze, the student can teach the concept with the help of questions. So nowadays, if you want to conduct a quiz, instead of open question, you can ask the close-ended questions, because close-ended questions sometimes they are very difficult to solve by the students, because to learn each and every point, to learn each and every, because MCQs are little bit different. Faculty can ask the questions. Faculty can ask the question from any topic. So while teaching to the student, you can first create the question and then ask the student to give the answer. So for evaluation purpose, the Google quiz is the best option. There are various open source softwares are available. You can conduct quiz on Moodle also. Moodle is an open source software, and you can easily create your quiz with the help of Moodle. There is no problem at all, because in our university, after COVID-19, we are using the Google Classroom quiz also, as well as the Moodle also, for conducting or for analyzing the student understanding. The level 5, yes, as I already explained you, we can evaluate the student, we can check the student opinion about any social topic or any topic with the help of research paper. We can ask student to write as well as read the research paper, and the faculty member can teach the student to how to read and how to understand the research paper, because generally the research paper are 10 to 20 pages long. So this is the faculty member responsibility to teach how to read the research paper at a glance. And after reading the research paper, we can collect the student opinion about various about the different criterias, and then evaluate, and we can write down the student comments on Google Keep, and later on we can evaluate it. And the last level is create. So as I already explained you, UML is a unified modeling language. This is a tool, this is a software. With the help of this software, we can draw the different types of diagrams. We can design our prototype. And what is prototype? Prototype is not an actual model. Prototype is generally a paper model. On paper, first we draw the blueprint of our business. And after finalizing this blueprint, after finalizing this prototype, now we can start developing or designing this business model. And if for evaluation purpose, for evaluating this prototype, we can chat about the prototype with the student on Google chat room. It is very simple. We can first you have to create the Google chat room. After that, you include all the students one by one, and then you can perform, or you can conduct the you can discuss with your student. You can ask the question, they can respond you, and on the basis of Google chat room, we can evaluate. So this is the way we can evaluate the students on a level 6. So I think I am done with my presentation, and I am happy to answer all the participant questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Hema. You have proven that technology does play a crucial role in revolutionizing the teaching scenario. For handling the queries from participants, I would like to invite Dr. Ashish Mishra. Sir, please ask question from the participants to the panel.
Thank you, madam. We have immense number of questions from the participant side in chat box. Only 2 questions which I like to put up before the keynote speakers. The question number 1 is, how Bloom taxonomy used for research a part of writing lesson plan? But is request to honorable keynote speaker, ma'am, please reply and convince the participants.
Hello.
May I repeat the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Hello.
How Bloom taxonomy used for research? Madam, are you? I am audible. Hema, ma'am?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay. I'm just repeating the question. Question number one is how Bloom taxonomy used for research apart of writing lesson plan.
Okay. So we can use the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy while writing the research paper or while teaching the research paper through the student. The first of all is the when we write a research paper, the first is you have to write the abstract. So the first thing is first you understand the concept. After understanding the concept, now you find out uh, how to use your concept, how to use the concept while writing the research paper. That is, when you write a research paper, there are various sections. So for writing the abstract, your concept understanding should be strong. Then the second section is literature review. So for literature review, you're remembering the level one should be strong, because when we write a literature review, we write a paragraph, and the third section of research paper is methodology. So for writing the methodology, your concept should be strong. So first you analyze the complete thing and then write the methodology. And after writing the methodology, then after writing the methodology, we can propose our method and then directly conclude it. So while writing the research paper, we can use the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. That's it.
Madam, we have a second and last question.
Yes, sir.
That is, can the grades be exported to Excel or Google Sheets?
So, sir, the first thing is the faculty member can collect the responses on Google Sheet also. Sir, same thing we can perform with Excel also, but the advantage with Google Sheet is we can collect the student responses at a one time, and then a faculty member can easily evaluate it. So this is the advantage of Google Sheet.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Ashish sir, for taking the queries of the participants. With this, we are near to our conclusion of at the end, my sincere gratitude to our panel members, Dr. C.S. Lalwani, Dr. Shemes Orele, Mr. Abhishek Bhatnagar, Mrs. Rema Rajiv, and Professor Hema Gaikwa for sharing their experience and enlightening us on effective utilization of Bloom's taxonomy in quality online teaching and evaluation, and making this webinar interesting and meaningful. I convey my deep regards and hearty thanks to most endearing Dr. Srimati Shubda Pandey, Managing Secretary Shiksha Mandal, Madhya Pradesh, for her esteemed presence and guidance throughout this webinar. The successful completion of this webinar owes much to the stewardship and vision of Dr. Sunil Kumar Pava, Principal GS College of Commerce and Economics, Autonomous, Jabalpur. I would also like to thank HOD Department of Education and co-convener Mrs. Aditi Anish for supporting me throughout the planning. Thank you all the members of organizing committee, Dr. Ashish Mishra, Dr. Sunil Deshpande, Mr. Anurag Upadhyay, Mr. Praveen Singh, Dr. Vandana Paroha, Dr. Seema Paranjpe, Dr. Tripti Dikshit, Dr. Usha Mishra, Ms. Kausar Bano, Dr. Ujjwala Ayachit, Dr. Shail Pandey, Mrs. Anushri Darekar, Mr. Prateek Bhatia, Mr. Ankit Khare, Mr. R.K. Patel, Mr. Abhishek Srivastav, and Mr. Jayant Pandey. I have a very long team with me to support me. I also extend my thanks to the professors, office staff, and all other members of GS family for their support. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants to add value to this webinar. For the participant, there is a note that feedback link will be shared with you just after the webinar, and e-certificate will be given only to the candidate who will fill the feedback form through link, and link will be remain open till 3rd 11 p.m. Thank you one and for all for this support to conduct this webinar. Thank you everyone. YouTube participant, please wait. We will share the link very soon. You can click on the link and share your feedback. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.